Hey everybody, Anjali this side, a 2026 design aspirant. I've been bringing out a series of organized design prep content along with useful tips and tricks that might help you in some other exams too. So without further ado, let's start the video, and today we'll be learning techniques and manufacturing processes that some Indian crafts use. So let's start with the different types of castings. So casting is when a molten material, which is a liquefied material, is shaped by pouring it into a hollow mold, a hollow cavity. Put the liquefied material inside the mold and then you leave it to dry, so that is called casting, and then you remove the mold and take out the product. For this we have brass bells from Sarthebari, Assam. I've put photos along with the crafts for you to see, however don't intend on infringing any copyrights. Then we have sand casting, where the molten material is poured into sand molds. So basically a mold is made out of sand. It is cheap and it gives rough finish. Moradabad brassware from Uttar Pradesh is an example. Next we have plaster mold casting, where the mold is made out of plaster. It gives a smooth surface and fine finishing, like in the Jaipur blue pottery from Rajasthan. Next we have slush casting, where the hollow forms are made by coating the mold walls with the liquid material. So you don't pour all the material inside the mold to make it like a solid object, but instead just coat the mold inner walls so that a form with a hollow cavity is made. Next we have lost wax or the investment casting, where a wax model is coated in clay, then the wax is melted out and instead the molten material is placed inside it and then again left to dry. Dhokra, a very important craft, is using this technique. It is also mentioned in your painting 11 and 12 books. Next we have the centrifugal casting, where the mold is continuously rotating and it spreads the molten material evenly. We have the continuous casting. Here you just pour your material constantly instead of rotating your mold constantly. Okay, metal rods and sheets are made out of this in Jamnagar, Gujarat. Die casting is where the molten material is forced into the mold under pressure. Very fast because your material goes inside, taking less time because a lot of pressure is being put on. So I've written a few differences between some confusing terms. Firstly, casting versus molding. We'll be discussing molding in a later part of the video. So casting is when you pour the liquefied material into a mold and then let it harden. Molding is when you shape a soft material inside or on a mold using pressure or heat generally. Next we have slush casting versus lost wax casting. Slush casting makes the hollow objects by coating the inside of the mold. So you coat the inside walls of the mold with your material. However, in lost wax casting, you melt away the wax model so that your clay model, the clay mold is left, and then put your molten metal or the molten material inside it and solidify it. So a hollow object is not produced. Next we have the difference between centrifugal and continuous casting. Centrifugal, as I said, it uses the spinning force to spread the molten material in a mold. So you continuously rotate your mold instead of rotating the whole or spinning the whole material. In continuous casting, you evenly pour out the material. You continuously pour out the molten material so that you can make long shapes like rods or like sheets. Next we have moldings. So molding is again when you shape a soft material inside a mold. So there are Malala terracotta plaques from Rajasthan. Next we have open molding and closed molding. As the name suggests, open molding is when the material is shaped in an uncovered mold, and then there's closed molding where the material is enclosed between mold halves, like you might have seen shaping modaks in that modak wala machine. So that is an example of closed molding. Shell molding is when a thin hardened shell mold is used. So the mold is made out of thin and hardened shell. Next you have slip molding, where the liquid clay, it is poured into an absorbent mold. It is used to make ceramics. So Khurja pottery from Uttar Pradesh is an example. Next we have injection molding. The heated material, the molten material, is injected inside a closed mold. So you use an injection or something very pointy to inject the material basically. Next we have transfer molding, where the heated material is transferred into the mold cavity. You just transfer it directly into the mold cavity, the hollow cavity. Slush molding is when the soft material coats the mold interior without pressure. So you just coat the inside walls of the mold without any pressure, without putting any pressure. You can make flexible and hollow products from it. Next we have compression molding. Here you put compression on the material, it is pressed onto the heated mold. So here you don't heat the material necessarily, but you heat the mold most importantly, and the material is put onto the heated mold and not inside the walls. Next we have vacuum molding, where the vacuum, it pulls together the material tightly over the mold. So vacuum creates some like force that basically binds the material together tightly so that it's very nicely put. Next we have rotational molding, where you rotate the mold and it coats the material evenly. We have blow molding, where air is blown into soft material inside a mold. Casting generally uses metal, while slip molding generally uses liquid clay, and it goes inside a plaster mold for ceramics. Slush casting versus slush molding is where in slush casting you mainly create hollow objects with the liquid material. In slush molding, however, you use powdered or liquid plastic to coat the mold inside. You coat the inside of the mold. There's centrifugal casting versus rotational molding. In centrifugal casting, you spin the molten material very fast using strong force. Centrifugal force you need not remember necessarily. It's a physics concept, but you can search on it more. Then there's rotational molding. It slowly rotates the heated mold. So here, instead of the material, your mold is being rotated to again evenly coat the material inside. Next, let's go to metalwork techniques. So we have the beaten metal work. You just hammer sheets into the shape. So metal sheets are there. Metal is malleable. It can be made into sheets. Okay, so you hammer those sheets and you give them shape. Thatera brassware from Jandiala, Punjab is an example of it. There's embossing or repousse. So you basically raise the designs by pushing the metal from behind. So if you like push metal from behind, obviously it will pop out from the other side, so that will come out as a raised design. That's called embossing. Then there's chasing, where the designs are detailed from the front. So basically you emboss and then you detail the embossed part using small tools. So we discussed about Murada brassware. That is an example of chasing as well. Next we have engraving, where you cut or incise patterns into a metal using tools. So there's bidri ware. Bidri ware is again very important. It also uses inlay work, as we will discuss later. It's from Karnataka. Next we have etching, where the designs on the surfaces, they are created using chemicals or abrasion. Abrasion is basically making the material stand out, making the material pop out, like you can see in the pictures over here. Jaipur silver work from Rajasthan is very common. Patination is where you color the surface through the chemical treatment. Swami Malai bronze icons from Tamil Nadu are an example of this. There is damasoning or koftgari, if I'm pronouncing it right. Fine metal wires, fine as in very thin metal wires, are inlaid into another metal surface. They're put into another metal surface. Koftgari craft from Udaipur and Sirohi from Rajasthan is commonly seen. Generally, you'll see swords or talwars or their handles and shields using this technique. Filigree or tarakashi mainly from Odisha is used in the silver filigree. So the fine wires, they are again, thin wires, they are twisted into patterns. Clips and jewelry or statues, showpieces are very famous. There's enameling or meenakari. So colored glass powder is fused into the surface by firing. So Jaipur meenakari from Rajasthan is an example of it. It is a very elegant and very pretty, a very beautiful art form. There is gilding, where you use thin decorative coating, mostly like gold leaves, and you apply it onto a surface. So the Tanjore paintings or the Thanjavur gold leaf work from Tamil Nadu is a very big example of this. Next, we will move on to stone, marble, and wood techniques. So there is inlaying, where you put contrasting or like different materials into a base surface. A form of this is pietra dura or the parchinkari, where you put semi-precious stones into some surface. So the contrasting materials in this are the precious stones and the surface. There is Agra marble inlay work from Uttar Pradesh. Next we have carving. You remove the material using tools to create the shape or the designs. This is also mentioned in your painting books a lot. A lot of the temple sculptures from Mahabalipuram, Karnataka in south, you can see this work a lot. There is relief carving and intaglio carving. Relief carving is when the design is raised from the background surface. For example, over here we can see that the design is popping out, right? So that is called relief carving. You can search more examples on the net. Intaglio carving is when the design is cut below the surface level, so behind. You can see some examples on the net. There is pyrography, where the designs, they are burned into the surface using a heated tool. So you basically place a heated tool on the surface and the design will get burned onto the surface. There is wood turning, where the wood, it is shaped on a rotating lathe. Lathe is a machine. You can see its pictures on the net. Then there is lacquering. Lacquering is putting a glossy coating on the surface of your product so that your product stays protected. Dust can be removed easily, it can be wiped easily, and just to seal the product basically. The Channapatna toys from Karnataka are an example. There is marquetry, where decorative veneer pieces are arranged into patterns. Veneer are like small pieces. So Sadeli wood inlay from Surat, Gujarat is an example. Difference in etching versus patination is that etching cuts or designs the surface using chemicals or acids. In patination, you are not cutting anything, you're just changing the surface color either naturally or chemically for an aged effect. Embossing and relief carving difference is that embossing raises the design by pressing something from behind or the front, but relief carving, you just remove the whole material around the design so that your design can be stood out. Relief carving versus intaglio carving, as we discussed. Relief carving makes the design raised from the background, and intaglio carving, it cuts the design into the surface below the background level. Clay and ceramic work techniques we will go on to now. So there is wheel throwing, the normal pottery that we do using the pottery wheel. Khurja pottery is an example of this. Then there is coil pottery. You create rolled coils of clay and then you stack them together or build your whole object using those coils. There is glazing, where a glassy coating is fused onto the pottery surface so that your pottery product is safe. Blue pottery from Rajasthan is an example. Kiln firing is when you heat objects at very high temperature to harden them. So kiln is basically like a place, you could call it like a oven where your clay products are fired and then they get hardened. Okay. Khurja pottery from UP is an example. There is raku firing, where you use rapid firing and cooling technique alternatively. Wheel throwing versus coil pottery is that in wheel throwing you shape the clay on a spinning wheel While in coil pottery, you build it from hand, you create coils and then form stacks, rolled stacks of clay by hand. Glazing is adding a glass-like coating mainly on ceramics, and lacquering is adding a protective shiny coating mainly on wood or surfaces. Inlay is when you insert the pieces into a carved surface, okay, and marquetry is when you create a decorative pattern using thin veneer pieces on the surface, okay. Next we move on to cane and fiber techniques. So braiding is when the strands they are interwoven in a diagonal pattern, and twinning is when two flexible strands are twisted around some support, okay. Then there is plating. Flat strips are interwoven in an over and under pattern like you do it in your hair for plates. Cane bending is when the cane is softened and it is curved into various shapes. Paper techniques include paper mache. So the pulp or the paper is layered and shaped with adhesive. You can see a lot of videos on these, like for example, you just cut the paper pieces into very small pieces and then you let them get soaked in water, and then you put adhesive or like glue in it, and then you can shape it almost like clay. So Kashmiri paper mache from Srinagar, Jammu Kashmir is famous. Next we have pulp molding, where the wet pulp of the paper it is pressed into molds. There is origami and there is kirigami. Origami, you just fold the sheets, you just fold the material into shapes, you don't use cutting or something. Kirigami is where you can fold and cut the sheet both. Kirigami 3D sculptures are very famous. Paper cutting is when the designs are created by only cutting the sheet material. So the Mathura Sanji paper stencils from Mathura, UP are famous. Next we have paper quilling. You roll paper strips and shape them into designs. Braiding versus plaiting is when in braiding you intertwine the strands into a structured pattern and it looks decorative. Plaiting is a simpler version of intertwining or weaving the strips in an over and under pattern. So like you put one stripe under, the next over it, the next under it. There are different types of plaiting, but yes. Origami again, as I said, it uses only folding paper, and kirigami uses both folding and cutting of the paper. Kirigami combines folding and cutting to create 3D forms, while paper cutting only cuts the design from the flat paper. Next we have glass techniques. So there is glass blowing, which is shaping the molten material, the molten glass, by blowing air through a pipe to make hollow objects like bottles, vases, etc. Firozabad glassware from UP is an example of this. There is glass fusing, where you join the melted pieces of glass together in a kiln to create decorative patterns, panels, or jewelry. Basically, in glass blowing, you use bottles and vases more. You make bottles and vases hollow objects. And in glass fusing, you join and melt pieces to create panels or jewelry. So that is it for the video. Hope you liked it. Do like it, do subscribe to the channel, and I'll be bringing more informative videos soon. We'll also be covering reasoning topics like gears, pulleys, dices and cubes, and more such videos, so stay tuned for that as well. Thank you.